Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning to our honorable speaker and all participants for today's workshop. Thank you for joining our workshop that entitled Post-COVID-19 Aligned Education for Redesigned Transformation. For your information, this is the first workshop from Academic Training Unit for the year of 2022. Welcome back to all participants. And thank you very much because you are become peminat setia lah untuk bengkel ATU for every year. So thank you very much. So first and foremost, I would like to introduce our honorable speaker for today's session, Professor Dr. Fauziah binti Abdul Rahim. Professor Dr. Fauziah Abdul Rahim from College of Arts and Sciences School of Education and Modern Languages, Universiti Utara Malaysia. Professor Dr. Fauziah is conducting research on mediating, challenging yet supporting, and engaging learners' learning processes, which include the learners themselves emancipating their knowledge and expanding their capacity to develop their thinking, habit of mind, and ways of working research. And Professor also expert is multidisciplinary areas of language studies and educational psychology. All right. So without further ado, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Fauziah to start her sharing. And for the participant, if you would like to ask the question, please unmute your microphone, or you can state your question in the chat room during the workshop session. So I think over to you, Prof.
Thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good morning to everybody in UNIMAS Sarawak. Thank you, Dr. Mazlina, sorry. Dr. Nur Mazlina and Dr. Azra for helping me or being my co-host in doing this session this morning. Well, as I mentioned yesterday, we had a brief moment, the three of us yesterday. This is my first time doing this sharing session in UNIMAS, albeit virtually. So, and I am hoping that everybody would help me. I mean, would minta izin lah, yeah, for me to be able to use both languages, BM and English, and be relaxed. If not, I'll be like, dah lah first time kan, so dia jadi macam yelah, yeah.
Awkward sikit lah, Prof, ya.
Ya, biasalah kan, dah bertahun-tahun bercakap pun kita akan ada masalah yang sama je lah kan.
Exactly.
Because kita tak pernah berjumpa, so ini kali pertama. So I hope all of you will be patient with me, and I hope to be able to share something beneficial to everyone this morning. So allow me to share my slide. Oh, by the way, our school name has changed, Dr. Mazlina, from the School of Education Modern Languages to the School of Education sahaja.
Oh, School of Education sahaja. So College of Arts and Sciences, School of Education.
Yeah, it's actually School of Education, College of Arts and Sciences.
Oh, okay, sorry. School of Education, all right.
School tu bawah college lah.
Bawah college lah, okay.
So we have restructured, and the modern languages has gone to a different school. So our school is just from the School of Education lah.
I see. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So are you able to see my slide? Yeah, I think
yes,
you can, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So basically, I would like again to say thank you to especially Center for Applied Learning and Multimedia. I like your acronym. It says CALM, and for inviting me to share this research that we have done in 2020. And it's under the post-COVID-19 special research grant. So I have coined it as lessons from the past, because it's in the past, kan? 2021 has gone swiftly, last year, and now we're in 2022. So the title of the research is Higher Education Alert. ALERT is an acronym for Align Education for Redesigned Transformation. Basically, we understand that because of the COVID, there will be some readjustment that needs to be done by institutions of higher learning, regardless of, well, institutions of higher learning and institution of learning lah, basically daripada prasekolah sampailah ke institusi pengajian tinggi kan. So it's basically almost all institution of learning had to redesign and realign their whatever that they were doing. So again, I would like to say thank you for UNIMAS for inviting me, and well, here goes. Right. What I have sort of planned for this 2-hour session, I've divided it into 4 parts. The first part, or the first quarter, is to share the research findings. So that I hope to be able to do that within 30 minutes. Okay. So I'll be sharing the findings that we found from our little research funded by MOHI, as I mentioned just now. And then we will look at the implication for various parties. That would include practitioners, either you are lecturers or administrators or managers. I'm not sure whether there are any managers or I'm sure there are people in the management team in this session this morning, but definitely I'm sure the majority are the lecturers. So yeah, there will be some discussions on that. And then we will do a little bit of reflective activities, and it's through these interactive activities that we can have a little bit of unpacking the barriers of change, because basically what is required to us is to do some form of transformation ourselves. And then we complete and conclude that with a Q&A session. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. But as I mentioned lah, I ni susah bila dapat mic kan. It doesn't matter whether it's virtual or in person. I get carried away. So I hope to be able to do that within 2 hours. Yeah, we'll see. So we're in the first quarter. So we're in the first quarter where this is sharing of the research, and I'll be talking about the research, which is actually basically we were interviewing leaders in the institutions of higher learning. There were only 3 people, three researchers in this team. Together with me were Dr. Nur Seha alias and a lecturer from the Islamic Business School, and my colleague Dr. Noliana Bukhari from the School of Education. And we have the people that was very significant to us, because it's a 6 months project, and at that time I was the dean of the School of Education. I had 2 research assistants that helped us with the project, basically Cik Nur Hafisha Ali, as well as Dr. Abdul Rahim Behlasen, who just completed his PhD, but he was stuck in Malaysia and couldn't go back to his hometown because of the pandemic. Right, so this 6 months project was, we received 20,000 grant, 2,000 Malaysian ringgit as the grant. And basically the research objective was to gather baseline data and changes made by the institutions in terms of COVID-19 effects of learning and teaching in view of the existing policies. So we all know that we have policies that we have to follow. Basically, we've got the Malaysian Education Blueprint that basically guide us until this present moment. So we want to see how institutions of higher learning work around the context in which they were in view of the existing policies. And from there to propose a framework for policy improvement, which we named it as Redesigning Transformation in Malaysian Higher Education in Times of Crisis and Forward. Right, a little bit of the research background. I think all of us are very much aware of this. When we heard about this COVID-19, it was in a far distant country We thought that it will never affect us until 2020, in the middle of our semester, when we were all, getting the gear ready and some of us were about to actually have the exam, midterm exam and whatever. We had COVID-19 knocking on our door and the whole world stood still. And there was this period of, it's not just chaos and uncertainties. It was really don't know what to do period. All of us were clueless, but people in the management team, I'm sure the office hours were no longer 8 to 5. It was 8 to 12 or 2 o'clock in the morning, because they were constantly thinking about what to do next and how to help and support the university, to make sure the university continue to do what's supposed to be doing for the students. So, and because of that, we had this new norm. They call it new norm. We were already struggling with our normal ways of doing things, and now we've got the new norm. And some of us have not been able to use the technology, LMS. They were still struggling with the LMS. They were still struggling with blended learning, for God's sake. And suddenly they had no choice but to switch 100% using technology. So we had a lot of problems all of us know that we have, not only the students had problems, students pula, they were, depending on where they were, if they were at home, because at certain universities, it was the midterm break. So they had gone back home, but they can't come back to the university anymore. And those who were stuck in the university were waiting endlessly waiting for nothing, until they realized that they too had to leave the university at one point of time. So all this waiting and waiting were endless until certain institutions realize that they cannot wait and they have got to do something about it. So at that was the period where we collected the data to basically interview 17 leaders from 9 public universities in Malaysia, and these universities were chosen based on their type and location. So when I say type, it means either they're comprehensive universities, or were they M-tone universities, or were they RU universities. So they were chosen on that basis, and location here means central, north, south, as well as east. We couldn't do, with that limited budget and limited time, 6 months, we couldn't do for the whole entire public universities, so we had to choose, and that's why we just chose 9 public universities who volunteered, where the leaders volunteered to participate. So we chose the qualitative strategy to understand the depth of the decision making and the issues that they had. So we thought that the best is actually to really get the heart and mind of all these participants that were involved in this research, and that's why we used the qualitative strategy. But initially, we had to do desktop review, where we looked at all the policy documents available either within our country and as well as outside of the country. And from there, we did the content analysis and to develop our interview protocol. Once we've developed the interview protocol, we were ready for our video conference interview. That in itself is also our first experience of, changing the ways of interviewing. Usually you go and see the person person face to face, but now we've got to do it like this. I was actually interviewing via WebEx and sometimes Zoom. So that was the video conference interview, and from there we did the thematic analysis, and we used Atlas TI. So the framework development, as I mentioned just now, there were a series of stages. We did the content analysis, we did the interview protocol, we did the pilot testing for the protocol itself, and as well as the methodology of doing it, the feasibility of doing it, and finally the data collection. So what we found from the 9 public universities, as you can see, the different dimensions of the web. Different universities have different different issues that they had to cater to, and different universities have different approaches to handling the situation. So it all so in total, if you look at GR tu maksudnya the total number of codings lah from that particular dimension. I mean, not dimension, concept, the leadership and all that. GS tu is actually the bigger coding lah. Yeah. So for leadership, there are 7, curriculum 7, but some there's just one. Although we have various data coming in from various university participants, but basically they were still talking about the same thing. So what are those explanation? Yeah, when you talk about leadership, it's basically looking at what we were looking at. We were looking at the leaders and their decision making that was done in view of addressing issues on teaching and learning, as well as assessment in view of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the leaders that we interviewed were well, it depends on the institution and the governance of the institution. So some of them have like various portfolios. So that they what we targeted was the deputy vice chancellor of academic, and then the directors of the University Teaching Learning Center, because they were involved in the training or decision making at the Senate level. And if they had the curriculum different portfolio for the curriculum, that director or that person in charge was also interviewed. So the open coding were decision making, waiting for directive from the KPT, working as a team, talking about discrepancies, chaos, suggestions for leaders. So some were actually suggesting what the leaders should do, and suggesting partnerships between the university, between leaders, and between university and the either industry or the ministry. But the interesting bit is the fact that waiting for directive from KPT was also apparent to some of the leaders, and because of that, they had waited for a long period of time before the university was ready to do whatever that needs to be done. And there are some implications on that because due to that waiting. In terms of motivation, we wanted to look at to describe the perception of the leaders about the lecturers and students in relation to adaptive skills, whether they're ready, whether they were interested to learn via online, mental health, well-being in the midst of the semester, especially in relation to teaching, learning, and assessment during the pandemic. And what's also interesting is the fact that almost all the universities realize that they do have problems in terms of readiness, where instructors were not really ready for technology, not all of them. But not all of them were equipped with the competence in terms of using the technology. So that's where, as I said just now, different universities have different contexts and different ways of handling the situation. So some had spent time to make sure that the readiness of their instructors were done first before they continued the teaching and learning processes, while some, because they knew that they had already given enough and they knew that the lecturers were equipped, can proceed. And for those that few people who could not use the technology, can be handled personally. So they already continued with the teaching and learning. But the interesting also is the notion of when we interviewed the lecturers, we lecturers pula, sorry, the the deputy vice chancellors and the directors, the directors especially were very happy that not happy lah. I would say looking at the pandemic as a blessing in disguise. Actually, the blessing in disguise was one of the word, the actual verbatim that the participant actually said, because it helped initially they had trouble getting people to come to attend their training, but because of the pandemic, everybody realized that, hang on a minute, I don't know how to use the technology, and I need to know now. So if before they were struggling to get 2 or 3 people coming in to come and listen to the webinars and whatever, and now they realize that within 10 minutes it's full, and they had to start using FB links and whatsoever. So I'm sure until now that has been a trend, and I hope that's a very positive new norm, if that's if you want to call it, because that shows that instructors continuously want to improve themselves. The bad side is when instructors feel that they're all perfect. Yeah, so feel free to ask me questions. Yeah, if not, I'll go on and on and on. In terms of human resource, we did ask questions whether they were recruiting any new talent or training, or if they were recruiting, were they considering, because of the current that situation that they were facing, that they had to change the criteria, whether when you are now getting people coming in as a lecturer, you would want them to be already equipped with technology competence, or those in the administrative also have that skills. Well, if you look at there's one that says, not one, there are a few which says they didn't consider new additional criteria, but they were recruiting during the time when it was MCO, but they did it online rather than the normal face-to-face. And it's also interesting that some of the universities, and it shows in their web, the larger the web, it shows the commitment. It also mirrors the commitment of the upper management in coming into the training. And for example, the more issues that they were able to discuss and to deal with it, it's because even the upper management were also involved in the training to make sure that they understand what's going on, meeting the instructors to find out what their concerns are and how the university and the upper management can actually provide that kind of a support. And that mirrors the findings that we found. Yeah. In terms of technology, that will be related to the e-content development and the use of the Web 2.0 tools and open resources and technical support. Again, this one really depends on the institution. Institution that had allocation to assist lecturers with the Web 2.0 tools, I mean, any teaching and learning tools online were seen as providing the right support for the instructors to stay calm and proceed with something that all of them were alien, to a certain extent, alien in doing, but they were receiving all this technical support. But there are also institutions that did not provide all this technical support, but because they were already providing the training to be exposed, that the lecturers were not dependent on the university to provide the support. So it depends on the kind of situation. So there are universities that did not provide the enough training before the pandemic that required the instructors in need of more support, especially the technical support lah. And some universities actually given funding, so that will be under the funding, but it's funding related to technology. Yeah. Infrastructure will be the use of laptops, hardware, bandwidth, Wi-Fi, teleconferencing, learning management system, and e-content. And almost all the universities that we interviewed, the representatives of these universities that, or the participants that were involved in, said that the universities have actually allocated a good amount of funding to ensure that the infrastructure were getting better and better in order to help with the teaching and learning processes. Yeah. For example, increasing the bandwidth in the university, making sure that the LMS can now be used simultaneously by all students at the same time. Because before this, it was, before this, they had the pleasure of seeing the students face to face. So you don't need to use the LMS, 100%. But now it's like getting a huge number of students and lecturers using the LMS, and they've got to make sure that it functions well. So that's why some of the universities even considered getting their own cloud to ensure the smooth running of the use of LMS. And of course, in order to do that, they need the financial support. So some universities actually have special packages given to, and these special packages are not just the ones given by the government or external funding. It's actually given by the university. So that's our definition of special packages. So again, you will be able to see based on the number that I'm showing right now, some actually give a very, very huge amount of money or allocation, while some, just spend something that is meant for everybody. So it depends on the capacity of the institutions. Of course, the more they the provision that they were able to provide to the students and even the lecturers, it helps in the teaching learning processes. Right. In terms of the MQA and professional bodies, these are changes of the implementation of quality assurance practices during the COVID-19 pandemic while ensuring continuous quality improvement. And apart from certain professional bodies, most of them complied with the MQA where they did some form of readjustment because MQA gave them the leeway. So they did readjustments of either the way in which they teach in terms of from face-to-face to online, or the way in which they carry out certain activities. However, those programs under professional bodies like nursing, medic, engineering, counseling, especially counseling, quantity surveying, architecture, those are the programs that had to ensure that there is some form of face-to-face, because that's part of their professional body requirement, and that's the only institutions that had students coming back to the university, even when others were still learning from home. And in terms of internship and practicum, almost all the universities had changed the way in which they allowed their students to do their internship and practicum, especially since some workplace had also changed their ways of working, where they allowed their staff to work from home. So by default, the interns were also asked to work from home. So all this flexibility and adjustment that was done were also considered by the institutions of higher learning that was involved in this study. Okay. Alternative assessment was also one of the component that was discussed, because almost all the universities that we interviewed had problems doing online assessment at that point of time because at that point of time they were not ready with the system, so they had to struggle. They had to find an alternative by changing all their final exam to continuous assessment. And the problem with that is that that's where they felt that some of the lecturers were not ready to do that because they were so complacent with the final exam questions, and some struggle to change those final exam questions to either take-home examination or alternative assessment. And as a result of that, they then complain because there were just too many people who got A. And you know, they start questioning about alternative assessment, whether it's actually appropriate or not. So that is an issue in terms of the misconception of the grading and the concern of academic integrity among the students, because they realize that when they provide alternative assessment, students tend to just change the name and submit similar assignments for the lecturer, as if the lecturer do not have any system to check. So those are issues that was raised by the participants in the study. In terms of teaching practices, the pedagogical and technological content knowledge and skills for instructors to consider when teaching were part of the operational definition. And this focuses on the meaningful and learner-centered approaches, which includes the ability to constructively align the mode of delivery from face-to-face to online. We focus on student-centered learning because of the nature of our system, our higher education system, where almost all, I think all, I wouldn't say almost, all our programs are related to outcomes-based education. And because it's related to outcomes-based education, therefore student-centered learning is crucial. And so we were asking, and all of us, were asking questions to the participants, whether was there a struggle to get lecturers to do student-centered learning when they were doing it face-to-face, and how are they now going to continue doing student-centered learning in an online manner. So those are also discussions that was raised, and the issue now here is the notion of blended learning, because the definition of blended learning before this was, you know, seeing your students face to face, doing activities, asking them to do work outside of the classroom via online, coming back. So it's a flip kind of classroom within online and face to face. However, the definition now changes from the synchronous to the asynchronous, whether you are seeing them like this now, synchronous, or asking them to do tasks online, asynchronous. So these were challenges, because they were already struggling with blended learning notion before the pandemic, and now having to make sure that everybody understand that when you do like this is not blended learning. This is still considered as online conventional way of teaching, where it's just one way, there's no interaction. There's just one way where one person is actually speaking, and naturally the person will be the teacher or the lecturer, whatever that you call it. So so that is also the thing that they mentioned. However, again, as I mentioned, depending on the university, depending on the culture, I would say the culture of the institution, some were confident that their instructors were ready to do more student-centered learning approaches because of the exposure that they have done via training on the various Web 2.0 tools and the various platforms that the instructors can use when conducting interactive activities with the students. However, in terms of learning engagement, which basically is defined by the learning processes and involvement of the instructors, especially when they were attending training, and the learners when attending classroom. Experience in terms of the attitude change, the cognitive change, and the behavior when learning. So learning engagement includes involving learners online. And participants also mentioned that because students were at home, they were not in the campus, like the lecturers themselves, who were also at home teaching, both were struggling with their own personal lives and their professional lives. That means the students, as a student, they struggle because when they are at home, they're not just students. They were also children of their parents, and their parents think that since they are there, so they can do the household chores, and didn't understand that during a certain period of time they had classes. So, and some parents felt that the students were pulling their leg by being, all the time with the computer, thinking that the children were actually playing games and whatnot. Some of them are actually playing games, but then because of that, the student felt very stressful because they had to convince the parents while struggling themselves using the, learning via online. So that was the student's lifestyle. And then there is this lecturer's lifestyle where the lecturers now are at home. They have to now to start thinking about handling their life holes, their livelihood holes, household, whatever chores, depending on gender now, I'm sure. It all involves around not just you teaching if you're just in the office, but now you're at home where your tasks become multiple. So engagement is a problem, not only for the lecturers to be engaged when they are attending the training, but also the students when they are attending the lessons. In terms of curriculum, there's not much change in terms of the way the curriculum is. The curriculum stays, but the only thing that was changed was the mode of the delivery. So the operational definition of curriculum here was to look at how flexible and dynamic was the curriculum, especially in relation to in terms of crisis, whether the curriculum that is value-laden that addresses the development of graduate knowledge and skill in blended learning contexts. So we were asking those kind of questions. Were the curriculum designed in such a way that it was helping, it was facilitating both instructors and learners to continue their teaching and learning processes. And some of institutions who were ready with their MOOC and their micro-credentials were far advanced compared to those who were, just starting to do their MOOC and using them. And some were also considering the flexibility of begin to understand the flexibility that was required in the future-ready curriculum that's there, being mentioned by the Ministry of Higher Education even before the pandemic. And now they're beginning to understand, we can now see the connection, why you need to be flexible and you need to be future ready and all that, not just for the students' employment, but also in times of crisis like this. So, as I mentioned just now, in terms of the curriculum, there was no changes in terms of the content, but the mode of delivery, yes. But they were all already considering, some of them were already considering to look at the curriculum in a different way. So in a nutshell, we came up with the, I'll get back to the chats later. Yeah? Let me just finish this framework and then I will switch on the chat. I know there's one question for me. So this is the Higher Education Alert Framework. While we were discussing, or perhaps speaking and getting information from our participants, we realized that although there were these components that's there, but there were a lot of uncertainty. So it all depends on the level of uncertainties that each of these component has. And the uncertainties also influence the decisions that was done, the support that was given, the allocation, the technology, the decision on the way in which they engage the learners and the way they teach. So the uncertainties, the more the uncertainties, chances are you will find certain institutions, their web were not as expensive. They were very, small, because they were waiting. So when you're waiting, you don't do decision, and that's where you do not see what are the possibilities that you can and cannot do. So from the framework, we have divided curriculum, teaching practice, learning engagement, alternative assessment, internship, practicum, MQA, professional bodies components as teaching and learning dimension, and the leadership, motivation, human resource, technology, infrastructure, and financial support as the enabler dimension, which means these are the dimensions that if you have will enable teaching and learning to become better. Right, let me just stop there, and yeah, I'll get one. Okay. I think I saw.
Yes, there is a question from Dr. Devagi, Prof.
Yeah.
How do we help students with demanding parents? I had received complaints or expression of feelings. It seems like luahan perasaan lah daripada, I think daripada students.
Yeah. And that luahan perasaan is very, very, I think it cut across the whole entire nation and world. It's not just in Malaysia, but also globally. Yeah. The students, and the funny part of it is we thought that Western countries will have no problem. Oh, they do have problems too. Their instructors are also struggling. Their students are also struggling because they don't have, what is missing here is the university atmosphere, where students are in the university, they meet their friends, they know when to chill. So they are missing that, and worse off, they have parents who are, just checking on them every 5 minutes to see whether, because parents can't go to work too, so they are 24 hours at home with them. So that's what all children will not want to have, right? So of course they will have the luahan perasaan. And worse still, our students are not all coming from affluent families. Some of them share only one room with 10 people, so they don't even have a space for them to study well. So that's very natural. So maybe maybe as lecturers we need to understand the dilemmas of our students as much as we understand the dilemmas of ourselves lah, that what we were going through at that point of time. I remember, because at that time I was the dean. I had to ensure that not only the students were well, I'm talking about mental well-being, that they were well, but my lecturers were also okay, and it's not easy because they were all, as I said just now, they were all at home, especially to the young lecturers when they have young children, clingy young children. So you can imagine how they're gonna do their classes while, if they've got 4 children, everybody is like, lagi seorang ni, ma lapar, ma nak ayam, ma nak pergi toilet. So how is that lecturer going to be able to do his or her work professionally? And that was the fear too, because they know now in front of them, although names are there, supposedly names of their students, but behind that camera can be the whole entire family members, is the student and the whole entire family behind that student, checking on the lecturer. Macam ni ke pensyarah yang dekat universiti ni mengajar? You know, you will have a lot of commentators at the back of the student's head. You know, if they are there. So that's why it's not easy. Demanding parents, we cannot also how shall I say, blame those parents, because I had one instance, one situation where both parents were retrenched basically during the MCO. So they were out of work. They have big family. They need to support the family. When our students were stuck at home, being the eldest in the family, eldest member among the siblings, he couldn't join the classes during the day because he had to become the apa tu? Yang hantar-hantar barang tu, Grab.
Rider.
Nak pergi hantar the nasi lemak that the mother now do. Asalnya the mother was not even doing nasi lemak, but everybody now become a nasi lemak punya you know, apa dia panggil? Allahu Akbar. Yalah, orang yang buat yang hantar-hantar
Rider
nasi
untuk
lemak.
hantar nasi lemak semua kan.
Right. So
Yes.
the students told the lecturer, ma'am, I cannot come for the lecture. So when I spoke to the instructors, some of my instructors said that I have got a problem. I've got one student of mine who cannot attend the class during the day. So I cakap, oh ni payah ni. So I had to now speak to the Senate, the Senate members. Can we have leeway to some students who now become the breadwinner of the family? Because they can go out, the parents can't go out. And they have to support the family now. So how do we take that middle way of being flexible to them and ensuring that they continue, or asking them to defer their studies. So itulah benda-benda macam itulah ya, yang we had to consider lah. I hope I'm answering your question, Dr.
I think so, Prof.
Lagi. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So basically that was the research. How am I? Exceeded the time. And next is the implication to various parties, which is suggestions for practitioners lah. Yeah. In terms of curriculum, this is also, well, what we've gathered here is also suggestions that was made by the participants themselves and from the readings that we've gathered from the content analysis. That curriculum need now to consider other ways of providing teaching and learning sessions, not just the face-to-face way of doing it. Maybe micro-credentials where students can actually do and collect badges and claim as their courses that they have attended. Maybe not for all, but for those courses that can be done that way, can be continued to do that way, and only for those courses that requires more hands-on, may also need the face-to-face. The other thing is about self-directed learning. Not only we're talking about learning engagement, which is actually learning engagement and motivation is already a problem among our students, how we can engage our students to learn, but they now need to be exposed to becoming self-directed learners. You know, they need to take ownership of their own learning, which is not designed for, you know, macam ni. Our students, some of them don't even like the program that they are doing right now. Okay, their lives are so hypothetically, some of them are so controlled by their parents that some of them, even the parents were the one who actually isi dia punya UPU. So they had to do the program that they were asked to do, because 7 generations before that were engineers, and they by default had to have to become engineer when they do not have the heart and mind to become an engineer. You know what I mean? I'm giving an example. No offense, yeah, people from the engineering faculty. So they already struggle to see where they are in the program when we were doing it face to face. What more in the online, you know? And online ways of doing things, or teaching and learning and all that, requires people who are self-motivated. They know they don't have time to do it on face to face. They want the flexibility to do whenever they want to do. It requires them to teach lah, to be able to understand how now to become self-directed. That means when you talk about self-directed, you know what you want to do. You plan your teaching time. You don't have to be reminded about what are the requirements. You know, even adults like us also struggle with self-directed learning. Try and enroll in one of the online courses, and you will know what I mean. It's not easy, because because we've got a lot of things that we need to do. That requires a lot of motivation. So it requires somebody who really, really want to learn to be able to do this. Unfortunately, the majority of our students, it's not that they don't want to learn. Half of them learn because everybody is learning, go to the university because most of them go to the university. Some of them were forced to go to the university and taking the program, as I mentioned just now, by their family. And only a few who actually entered the university because they want to. These people, they are very self-directed learners. They can handle it, but not everybody. So that's the reason why we need to have some form of exposure and include that in our curriculum in terms of the self-directed learning component in the content. And we also have to revise the teaching contact hours in terms of the synchronous versus asynchronous. And I think you and I know that being in front of the computer for more than 2 hours is already tiring. What more our students who are taking 7 courses and might have to be in front of the computer per day for 5 hours or more, and every day. So there will come a time yang mereka akan rasa macam muntah lah, you know, and especially being our students, they're not constantly reminded of good ways of, you know, being in front of the computer, where after a certain number of minutes, you have to bangun, you know, do some stretching, drink lots and lots of water. So if they don't do that, it might affect their health. So all this has got to be redesigned in order for us to provide that understanding of not just the content, but how they can now learn the curriculum in a better way. So again, as I mentioned just now about blended learning, we have to also redefine what we mean by blended learning now. In terms of teaching practices, as I mentioned just now, student-centered learning must be the way forward, because we're still talking about outcomes-based education. But this time around, it's no longer being there to guide them all the time. It's got to be them also taking ownership and become self-directed and autonomous in learning. Yeah. And we now also have to consider collaboration. We talk about collaborative learning. We talk about interpersonal communication in our learning clusters. But sometimes we do not do collaboration. We do things in silo. You know, my course is my course. Whereas we should be able to now work within faculties in order for our students to be able to do interdisciplinary assessment, where they do one project, but you are assessing them, you know, in various from various faculties and through various CLO, achieving CLO. So in that way, they don't feel fatigue and burden, you know, and they would then love learning and not just not ticking it off for doing things. And that requires a lot of collaboration, lah, whether it's local or international. And also to enhance soft skill learning activity. And what I mean by soft skill, we cannot run away lah from our noble. Now it's noble. It's called noble, right? It's actually talking about the learning clusters. And the learning clusters is basically the soft skill. So how do we enhance those soft skills? How do we still ensure that within this online, students still can communicate? How do we design in such a way that if we've got 100 students, we can hear 100 voices throughout that, throughout that 14 weeks that we have. So these are, it requires us to become a bit of creative and understanding the existing Web 2.0 tools that's already there in order for us to be able to do this, yeah. And of course, improvise the synchronous and synchronous mode of teaching. As I mentioned just now, if you feel that if you only see through your eyes and not through your students' eyes, you will only think about you. Whereas that means you've got 1.5 hours of class and you want to spend 1.5 hours in front of the computer speaking to your students. But if you turn the table, over, and you will see that the students will struggle listening to you for 1.5 hours. So there is a need for us to improvise the way we do our synchronous and our asynchronous mode of teaching so that teaching becomes meaningful to our students, regardless of the mode, whether it's online or face-to-face. And they get what they need to get. They are able to achieve the course learning outcome and the intended outcome that we want from our program. In terms of learning engagement, we still have to deepen not only the learning engagement, how to engage our learners. I just had one session with UMT yesterday on learning engagement and motivation. And how do we encourage our students to become engaged in learning, especially online. So it's not just about learning engagement now, it's digital learning engagement. How do we get our students to be involved in an online session? And how do we improve the learning support? Do we have a learning support? Maybe before this, all institutions of higher learning, just depend on the lecturers to provide whatever support that needs to be given. But good institutions of higher learning will have technical support. They will have their learning support. So the learning support will be for students if they struggle to concentrate, for example. So they know which channel to seek help. When they have problems with technical support, they can go and get that support from people who are expert in technical facilities. If we do not have those such things, and we rely only on our lecturers, then we are expecting our lecturers to know everything. You need to become the mentor, the motivator. You need to become the counselor. You need to become the technical, and yet at the same time you have to teach. So that's sometimes could be asking too much from the instructor. So there is a need for us to create this learning ecosystem that can help our students to seek help appropriately when needed. Yeah, and so that the instructors can really focus on how to ensure that the students can achieve the course learning outcome stipulated in their courses. And also develop more active integrated learning activities and outcomes lah. Yang tu tak boleh lari. When you talk about or OBE, you'll be talking about constructive alignment. When you talk about constructive alignment, tak boleh lari daripada learning outcome. So understanding your learning outcome, and thinking and designing the activities that will activate those verbs, those active learning verbs that you have in your outcomes, and ensuring that your assessment is also aligned to the learning outcomes cannot be denied. It has got to be continued, and in this time making sure that even in the online mode that can be still going on. Alternative assessment provides an option to many of our institution of higher learning. So we have to develop a more flexible assessment. If there is a need for us to use online assessment, then issues on equity, fairness, and inclusion must be considered. That means we must make sure that the students themselves, our students themselves, are able to gain access to the, gain access well enough for them to be able to use the online assessment. And alternative assessment also require instructors to understand what they need to do when they see their students synchronously and asynchronously, and providing feedback through the formative as well as summative feedback, because feedback is the one that will help the students to actually develop and grow. In terms of internship and practicum,
Prof?
yes.
Prof, sorry to interject, Prof.
Sure.
There is one question. I think it's suit with the alternative assessment just now that you are describing. So I think this fellow person asked about how do we avoid students copy and paste, especially I think in the programming course. So this is a question from our participant, Prof.
Well, I don't know about programming. I might say something gibberish and you might be laughing at me. But the fact that you are asking questions that you yourself can find the answer in the Google in 5 minutes, then you know that's a bad question. So if you want to provide take-home exam questions or online assessment questions, if you really want to use your previous, you see, you have to understand the context in which our students were when they were sitting for the exam in the exam hall. In the exam hall, do they have a computer for them to refer? Answer is no. Do they have books that they can bring along and spread in front of them? Unless it's an open book test. If it's a normal 2.5 paper examination, chances are the answer is also no, right? So no books, no resources, no tools that can help them. So that's why those kind of exams is really measuring what they know and remember to answer the question. If you use that particular question in a setting where they are at home, you do not have a video or proctoring devices to see whether they are actually doing it or they pay someone else to do it. Tara yang dekat dalam hall tu pun mereka ni boleh bubuh mereka punya jawapan dalam kasut lah, stokin lah, tarik sikit, asyik-asyik gatal je dia punya tangan. Rupanya dekat bawah tu ada je jawapan dia kan. Dalam hall tu pun ada masalah in terms of academic plagiarism and copying and whatever. Apatah lagi in the comfort homes, when they know you're not there, and they know that, and they're very good at doing the copy pasting. Takkan you tak tahu kot dekat if you watch that Malaysian is very very famous for doing copy apa panggil, cetak rompak lah apalah. So daripada cetak rompak lah apa, apatah lagi lah yang copy paste ni kan. They're very good. They're very very creative and very intelligent when it comes to copy and pasting. So what do? You ask questions that requires them to think. You ask questions that's relating to their lives, so that they cannot find that answer in the internet. How can I give you an example? Contoh, so I can give example in my field lah. If it's actually, I'm teaching educational psychology, so and one of the courses that I teach is psychology, child and adolescent psychology. So I ask my students to actually carry out the theory that they do. They video record themselves, carry out with whoever around them, whether it's their parents ke, neighbor ke, adik ke, siapa ke. They have to carry, well, they have got to be either child and adolescent lah. And see whether the theory is actually, does it make sense when they are trying to understand cognitive theory. Do that experiment with the members around them and see whether it makes sense or not. Does the theory help them to understand what's going on and how these people think when you talk about cognitive? So they have to video record. So they kena tunjuk siapa yang dia video record, right? So how to tipu like that?
So means Prof, your question has to be more application lah kan, kalau dari segi perspektif ini. And at the same time, yalah mungkin daripada perspektif authentic assessment itself lah kan Prof?
Yeah.
Means we have to transform type of questions lah kalau daripada perspektif yang Prof cakap tu lah kan Prof?
Betul. Maksud saya, kita kena tengok juga kita punya course learning outcome. Tapi kalau course learning outcome kita bukan apply, janganlah minta mereka
Yes.
apply. Tapi mereka boleh video. Katalah macam saya nak tahu apakah teori-teori, apakah ciri-ciri yang dia orang buat tu yang menerangkan teori tersebut.
Exactly.
It's actually basically explanation, right? Tapi dia
Mm.
kena explain based on the context. Dia tak boleh explain based on the textbook saja.
Bukan conceptual sajalah Prof kan?
Yeah. So it's
Okay.
still relating to the context that we are talking about here.
So means kalau daripada konteks yang our fellow friend tanya ni dari segi perspektif programming courses ni, mungkin academician ni mungkin lecturers have to think yang align dengan that particular element lah kan Prof?
Yeah. Of course, the first thing that I need to see will be the course learning outcome lah. Apa course learning outcome you untuk programming course ni? So daripada course learning outcome tu baru kita akan tengok, okay, cara kalau kita nak tanya soalan yang you tanya ni yang menyebabkan people copy and paste ni, kalau you yourself Google inside there, would you be able to get the answer? So I used to did one session with UTM. And they gave me questions because we were doing about open book exam and online assessment. And they gave me example of an online assessment that they have used, item that they have used in an online assessment. With it, I am not engineering background, but in 5 minutes, less than that, depending on my Wi-Fi, I could get the answer. And if I'm clever, if I don't get the exact answer, I just need to know that, I need to know roughly where am I heading to. Then I can just manipulate and adapt. Kan? So, the minute you ask questions, so macam mana yang I boleh tahu yang tu? Sebab soalan, bila kita guna soalan final exam kita yang sedia ada, dan kita ubahkan dia sebagai open book and online assessment, jangan menangislah kalau dia copy and paste. Sebab konteks berada dalam dewan dan berada di rumah adalah konteks yang sangat berbeza. Dalam dewan, pelajar tiada bahan rujukan. Dia kena ingat dan dia kena faham. Dia kena faham baru dia boleh ingat. Kan? Kalau dia ingat sahaja, dia tak faham, dia tak tahu apa yang dia tulis. Yang dekat rumah ni, dia tak faham ke, dia tak ingat ke, it's okay. Sebab dia ada bahan-bahan dia. And worse still, kalaulah kawan-kawan dia pula dalam dia punya, apa dia panggil sekarang ni?
Dalam WhatsApp.
Kan, there's a name that they call their community of people yang in this online. They can just ask one question and you get an expert to give you the answer. Not
exactly.
Dia pun dah tahu dah, tanya kat kawan dia, lebih kurang tanya dia lah. Sama je yang tak faham. So why bother asking my own friends? Ask my people, my network yang memang maybe they're already computer scientists. They know about
dalam
programming.
Discord ke Prof?
Discord, that's it. Yeah.
Yes, that is the global community inside the Discord.
And those are the learning community. Those are their social network that they have. Kita punya social network, well, I kata I lah. My social network is just my friends, my jiran. Their social network is global, and these people don't know what they are doing. Some of them are computer scientists, doctors. So bila dia sakit, dia tanya kat kawan dia yang doktor. Bila dia tak faham yang pasal programming, tanya dekat kawan dia yang computer scientist. So they do have that network to actually ask. So why ask questions that you yourself can get the answer from the internet? That's what I'm saying. That's the challenge that we have to do lah, in order for us to be able to know, to avoid this frustration. But you don't have to become frustrated, because this problem has been there even before the pandemic. When they were doing it face to face, they were already giving us that problem. So now with this pandemic, it makes us clearer. It's clearer to us what they're doing. So if I were you, give these kind of questions early as a part of your formative assessment. Maksudnya you tak bagi markah formative assessment. When you can trace that these people are doing the copy and pasting, that's when you educate your students. That's when you make them see the beauty of, even though you don't understand, you struggle to understand, whatever answer that you gave is based on you. Setakat apa yang you faham setakat ini. Daripada you copy and paste, dan yang itu bukan daripada you. Itulah makna ilmu. So kita nak kena bagi pelajar kita faham. Don't worry, because mereka ni dah ditrain daripada prasekolah lagi. A tu cantik. Tak kira lah A tu dapat macam mana. Kan? And kita masuk universiti pun benda yang sama juga. We feel that 4.0 is cantik. It doesn't matter how they got it. They want to do it copy pasting. They want to change here and there. And they're very good at tipuing. You know, they can get the 4.0, and where lo and behold, they can get the anugerah chancellor lah apalah. But it's not from them. But that one is nothing compared to those yang struggle to understand. They might not get, they struggle even to get second class upper, but that second class upper is going to take them a long way. A long, long way. Because they will have dignity. Yang tu yang kita nak. Pelajar-pelajar kita ni dah mula tak ada dignity. Sebab tu mereka jadi keyboard warriors lah. Dah tak ada dignity kan? Tak ada kerja lain. Jadi keyboard warriors. Marah dekat pensyarah, satu dunia tahu. So they don't understand. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I just say tipuing. Bulak ing, is that the Sarawak way of saying it? Okay, yeah.
Bulak.
Bulak, yeah. Okay. If you think copy and pasting is a form of learning, use it for formative assessment. But then tell them that copy and pasting is not novel. That you have to start somewhere. You can start with copy and pasting, then seek your own voice, seek your own view, seek your own thinking. Where is your voice in this, where is your idea in this? Maybe, and forget about whether it's correct ke tak correct ke, because what we want is at the end of the day to create human development, right? What we want is to get better citizens who are clever, even if they got second class lower, but they are clever in the sense that they know that they have dignity, they know that they have tried their best, and as I said, people who are like that, they will go far. Right, in terms of internship, we definitely need to revise and to consider various aspects of internship. In the West, they've already actually ventured into virtual internship even before the pandemic, because they had students coming from various countries and all that. So they were already far ahead thinking about all this. When the pandemic came, they were just smoothly going through. Whereas in our context, we were very contented with our face-to-face normal way of doing things. And now it's about time that we start thinking about what are the other possibilities for our students to get those skills. Yeah, I agree with you, Hamdi, that we're the one who taught them about this survival thingy, but what we want is not the survival. What we want is actually the kenikmatan ilmu tu. Barulah dia faham. Barulah kita tak payah nak cakap pasal matlamat tidak menghalalkan cara. Sekarang ni we have even people who are feeling that this is the new norm, that it's okay to do all these things. It is not okay. Okay, MQA and professional bodies, this is a struggle. I remember when I became the dean, it was a struggle to actually speak to these professional bodies, especially because we were dealing with counseling. They insist to have the normal norms. And it's difficult when you don't have that normal norm. Schools were closed. How can our interns go to school when the school is closed? Dia nak pergi sembang dengan siapa? Gardener pun tak ada, siapa pun tak ada nak buat counselling macam mana? So it takes us a few good dialogue between us and the professional bodies to understand, for them to give us alternatives. And we managed to get that negotiation cut across, yeah. And all these professional bodies need to also look at their code of teaching and learning and assessment to reconsider elements that they need to consider now, because of what we have learned from the pandemic, the instances for us to continue in this post-COVID era. And I am made aware that MQA is now doing that right now. Okay, this is the most interesting part. In terms of calm, kebetulan sama je dengan you all punya nama ya. In terms of leaders, we realize that leaders need to be calm and strong and have strong mindset. Tak boleh ghaflah, dia tak boleh kelar kabut dalam membuat keputusan, tapi tak bolehlah terlampau lama sangat nak buat keputusan. Jangan sampai takut pula nak buat keputusan, sebab dia akan menyebabkan the world is already VUCA, the world is already uncertain. Your failure to make decision is enhancing that uncertainty, which is not good. Because the lecturers will say, kita nak buat apa ni? Because there's a period of time when you now feel tak payah buat apa-apa, kita tunggu je, tak payah buat apa-apa. Kalau yang tu jadi new norm, bahaya. Kita tak nak situasi di mana kita tak nak buat kerja, kita tak nak jadi proaktif. Yang itu akan menyebabkan kita ke belakang lah daripada kita ke hadapan. Dunia sedang ke hadapan. Kita dah disebabkan kita punya ekosistem yang menggalakkan yang tu, kita macam lay back. It's sakit, relax. Biarlah COVID ni berlalu. Padahal orang dah mula kata kan, mula-mula dia peringat 6 bulan je. Dari 6 bulan jadi 2 tahun. 2 tahun dah, sekarang jadi 6 tahun dah. If we are waiting, we are going to be left far behind, and when we are too far, it'll be too late to even move. So what we require is proactive leadership style. And what we mean by proactive leadership style, you need to expect the unexpected. Do not stay in the contented. Do not be complacent. You have to you have to consider what if. So the people in what if in your management team are not the left wing. The what if is actually the one who's going to help you to get yourself ready, to move forward should something beyond your expectation happen. Okay, so that's why you need the network of teams, and the network of teams can be within your university, can be within the within institutions, between institutions. So the network of between countries, yeah. So the network of teams can be broad, yeah, and having effective communication to articulate what needs to be done is crucial, and understanding that because you are a leader, it does not only require you making that decision. You need to also trust the team that has more knowledge in certain situation. I'll give you an example. When you talk about pandemic, who would be the one who will know more in terms of what to expect? What kind of background do you think when we talk about the pandemic?
Medical person.
Correct. So if it's a medical person, you need to listen to the medical person. The medical person might not be the vice chancellor. The medical person might not be the deputy vice chancellor. Not all institutions are fortunate to have people from the medical background to become the leaders. So they will not have that So chances are most of the institutions of higher learning, I'm talking about pandemic as an example. I'm not saying that the leaders must be from medical. No. I'm saying that because because of the pandemic, it's medical related. So we have to listen to the people who have that knowledge, that information that can advise us. This is what we mean by distributing leadership in terms of they need to act, freely advise us in order for us to make the right decision. If not, we'll be doing the waiting for God knows what to do next. Sebab kita takut, kita tak nampak dia punya apa yang sepatutnya jadi. Tapi kalau orang yang dah faham, dia dah tahu dah apa nak buat, dia dah tak tunggu dah. Dia dah tahu dah what needs to be done. You know. So that's also important. Yeah. The question about UUM is handling classes F2F or hybrid or 100% online. It depends on the program. So some program that requires, the professional bodies requires us to make sure that it is, there is some contact hours of face-to-face training, hands-on training. Those students are to come back. For those who do not, because we all, majority are coming from the social sciences, so they can stay at home. So at the moment it's face-to-face and hybrid. It used to be 100% online, but like all universities, we had students with less, those coming from deprived background. That, remember I told you about that one room with 10 people sharing. Those are the kind of people that we want our students to come back to the university, so that they're not too stressful in the university. I am not aware of the specific equipment for hybrid classes. That will be under the UMIT department. I just know that they have some funding about it and they're working on it. And schools in the university, schools as in pusat pengajian, schools in the respective schools are also doing, having their virtual classroom to help the instructors to use, should they need to use it. Yeah. Right. In terms of motivation, there is a need for, in order to make sure that the students continue to become interactive, they have to be, teaching and learning has got to be designed in such a manner that it encourages collaboration and teamwork. The university that has got psychological support unit or counseling unit not only need to be should not just centralize at one place, but must also be available in every school faculty, preferably, so that students from that faculty can refer immediately rather than waiting in line for the number of people that's going to be in the waiting list to see the counselor, because that one counselor serving the whole entire 20,000 or 30,000 students. That's a bit way off. So the psychological support is very crucial. We don't realize this, but students are feeling lonely. Lecturers pun feel lonely kan, apatah lagi lah students. So students feel lonely, as I said just now. They miss that university atmosphere, the network that they have in the university. Coming back to the university, seeing their friends, sharing, discussing, laughing, crying, quarreling, all that is part and parcel of their growing up days. But now when they're stuck in front of the computer, setengah tu boleh ada mental problem lah. Sebab tu kita jangan terlampau fokus hanya nak menghabiskan kita punya syllabus tanpa kita melihat pelajar-pelajar kita lah. Dah lah memang tak boleh melihat. So kena make sure lah ada cara-cara dia untuk kita nak dapatkan maklumat daripada pelajar kita supaya kita boleh bagi kat mereka support yang diperlukan. Kalau kita tak dapat nak berikan, kita tahu di mana sumber untuk membantu kita. So setting up 24 hours counselling call centers is as long as you still have this hybrid or online or whatever, you need to have these counseling call centers, which means at any point of time, students can just break down. And any point of time, lecturers can break down. So they need to know where they can seek support. If you can have macam kat negara barat, they have this support system, kan, support team. So if you can have that kind of support unit, macam saya kata untuk nombor 2 tu, that will be good lah for them to. Sometimes you just need to tell people, you know, your problem. Lepas tell tu, problem tu tak solve. Tapi you rasa macam, lega, habis. Okay, now I can do whatever that I need to do. Tapi bila selagi kita pendam dia punya masalah yang mungkin sikit je, tapi you know, suddenly dia boleh meletup oleh kerana ada satu benda je. Yang hal lain tu yang the tip of the iceberg je tu, yang one ice pecah, the whole entire iceberg tu boleh jadi kelang kabut, kan. So that is that's what we don't want to happen. Okay, we don't know. Dah lah, kalau balik kat dalam campus ni pun, some of our students are staying one room, one person, one room. You don't know what they're doing in their room. Kalau ada kawan dia, ada dia punya roommate dia, at least kurang-kurangnya roommate tu tahulah, kawan saya ni kan dah 10 hari tak makan. 10 hari termenung tengok jendela. Kan, asyik menangis je. So dia ada orang yang nak bantu dekat dia, tapi kalau dia seorang-seorang je dekat dalam bilik tu, maunya apa ni, entah sembang dengan dengan siapa-siapa dah lah. Kan orang selalu kata bila dah lama dah tak ada tak ada orang dekat dalam bangunan tu, akan ada macam-macam, kan. So those are kan. So nanti mulalah bercakap dengan orang lain lah. Kita pun masalah juga kalau jadi macam tu. So so we have to be proactive. Don't wait until that happens baru kita nak kelang kabut, nak figure out, because when that happens, it's just too late. We have to help them before it happens, before the last straw that breaks the camel's back. We need to be there to help that camel. Okay. Okay, I will answer Dr. Hamdi, I will answer that question later, yeah. Human resources. In terms of policies for working from home, some universities are very concerned because they cannot monitor what you are doing at home, right? Silsilah hari bulan lebih masak daripada menulis artikel, or lebih banyak masak dari membasuh kain daripada buat kerja-kerja yang sepatutnya sebagai tenaga pengajar. So in the end, they ask everybody to come home. But some universities, because they play on trust and their people, their community are trustworthy, they remain, you know, for you to be able to work from home, as long as you fulfill the requirements that you need to fulfill. So new policies need to be considered by the respective human resources, not just, jangan cari jalan mudah untuk memudahkan perkara kerja you. Cari jalan yang betul-betul akan memberi manfaat kepada semua orang. So that would be the way forward lah, yeah. And perhaps to also consider new requirements of recruitment. Jangan masuk-masuk ambil je orang yang tak kerti pasal teknologi, you nak kena train dekat dia. So the next thing you know, lepas mengajar 10 tahun dah nak cakap pasal optional retirement. Baru 10 tahun kot nak optional retirement apa dia? You know, and don't want to come for training and whatever, because dia rasa macam saya tergugat lah kalau saya diarahkan untuk datang training, seolah-olah saya ni tak pandai. So janganlah rasa macam kita dah pandai lepas kita dah dapat PhD. Lepas kita dah dapat pangkat yang whatever pangkat yang we have. Kita masih ada ruang dan peluang untuk sentiasa maju ke hadapan, sentiasa berkembang, sentiasa you know, improve, kan. Jadi coming to just like you going to the counselors when you need help, coming to the training does not mean that you are not capable. Coming to the training means that you're showing positive attribution that you want to grow as much as you want your students to grow. That's a very, very positive reflection of as an academia. Okay, how do we detect if our students have problems even before their midterm exam, especially during online learning since we never meet them before? Itulah. That's why once in a while, get them to switch on their videos, get them to do consultation. When we had our face-to-face dulu-dulu, when everything was fine, everybody was in the university, we had consultation hours kan? Kenapa sekarang tak boleh buat consultation hours, tiba-tiba tak boleh so sepatutnya kita kena buatlah consultation hours where we ask every student, kalau kita tak boleh nak tanya setiap orang dalam kelas, we have hours that we will meet our students personally, maybe 2-3 students in one day ke, in a few minutes ke, just to ask them questions like, how are you, is everything okay, don't talk about the course yet, talk about them, what they're doing, so that you know them. When you know them, you'll be able and let them talk to you. So the more they talk to you, the more you know what is bothering them, right? So don't do that. Macam ni lah, bila dah ada exam baru kita tahu. Yang lawaknya, in the UUM context, we have our students evaluation form, kan? Yang students kena evaluate kan? Punyalah lecturer tu seronok sangat mengajar 14 minggu sampai tak perasan students tu daripada day 1 lagi tak pernah ada. Dah tukar nombor. Yang ada dekat dalam dia punya group tu is kawan dia punya group. They have all sorts of ways, right? To as I said, their network is very, very good network. They help each other. You rub my back and I rub yours. So they're very good with all these things. And then they realize that the students are not there from the very beginning because baru nak terkejar-kejar nak pastikan pelajar menilai mereka. Yang tu dah habis dah. You nak ajar, you nak intervene pelajar tu pun dah tak boleh dah. That's just too late. So that's why we need to make sure that don't wait until it's too late. Do it before even your midterm. Do it from the first day. And there are so many ways that you can do this, right? You can ask them to write in your LMS dalam forum pun boleh. Dalam suruh mereka buat self video recording, flip grade 2 minit ke apa ke about what they're doing at home and all that, just to give them a leeway for them to see you and not to see you, to tell you what they've been up to. So that's where you are able to detect. Those are the interventions that you can do in order to detect your students, especially when they have problems. And usually when they have problems, they might not tell you on the first hand. Sooner or later, you will know through their conversations. Sebab tu dalam kelas, janganlah 1,5 jam tu you saja yang bercakap. Setengah jam je you bercakap. Lagi 1 jam tu you biar pelajar you bercakap. Sebab masa pelajar you bercakap itulah yang you akan tahu apa yang sedang dihadapi. Kat masa itulah dia akan beritahu, doktor, saya minta maaf, saya tak dapat buat sebab. Kan dah boleh detect dah. Ataupun saya boleh buat setakat yang ni sahaja sebab apa-apa lah dia nanti beritahu lah whatever problem yang dia ada. So kalau you rasa macam dia saja nak mengelak, ada cara dia untuk nak intervene. Kalau you memang betul-betul tahu yang dia genuine, ada cara untuk you nak negotiate. So this is where we take the trouble to listen to our students, not only to see whether they are able to activate the learning verbs that's there already in the course learning outcome, but also to understand what's the problem that they might have before the assessment. Because we're already providing formative assessment before they do their summative assessment. Okay. In terms of technology, macam tadilah soalan-soalan yang tadi yang ditanya kepada saya kan, sama ada tak facility yang sepatutnya ada. Some actually have the board yang boleh tulis. I can't remember the name of the board. The LED board. I'm very bad with technology. I'm also struggling. I am actually learning and I like to learn, but I can't remember sometimes. So they have this LED punya board where they can write on it, while teaching their students. And some actually use their iPad in such a position that they can see, the students can actually see what they're writing. Some even use hero, yang they can write on the pad, and somehow the students can actually see it's connected to the whiteboard. To the board, the display in front of the students' computer. So all sorts of gadgets, and then they have to explore. So some of these gadgets, if you think that the school and the university can provide to all the lecturers, alhamdulillah, you should sujud syukur. But if all else fail, don't despair. Remember, what you want is you not your students to learn. Tak apa, you spend money on your students for their good. That is your sedekah, that for every ilmu that your students get because of your you bayar, you beli dengan duit you sendiri, equipment tu, setiap ilmu yang students you dapat ada ganjaran dia. Yang tak ada siapa pun boleh nampak, dan it doesn't matter, because that ganjaran yang tu yang sebetul-betulnya ganjaran yang sebaik-baiknya, and that will help you to become healthy. In that's how I see it. So teaching and learning oriented IT staff must also be present. So the IT department cannot just stay and tunggu sampai hard disk rosak ke apa ke baru dia nak kelang kabut. The IT department now has got to be the IT support system that I was talking about here. So in all the universities, they have to start thinking about how can we provide that technical support to all the students. How can we ensure that we can, if we want to do online assessment, we need to have the proctoring devices. How do we develop those proctoring devices? If we don't have the money, we have to develop. If we have the money, go and buy lah yang dah memang ada devices yang available there. So those are the things that the IT staff has got to now start thinking, because in the university, the core is teaching and learning. The core is not anything else. The core is teaching and learning. So kalau orang IT ke, orang apa sahaja, staff siapa sahaja yang bekerja dekat universiti ni, sebenarnya mereka adalah support system kepada teaching and learning. Jangan you rasa yang penting adalah research and publication. Yang itulah, di situlah di mana kita akan sentiasa tersway sikit daripada landasan dia lah. We are so focused on the research and publication, we forget about the teaching and learning. We think that it's not important. We do not provide the right facilities. How can our teachers, how can our lecturers and our students perform? So as I mentioned just now, this requires the infrastructure. So I was made to understand that every university, through their IT department, have been given good amount of allocation to improve the facilities in their universities, in order to create this virtual reality room or virtual classroom or hybrid classroom, whatever that you call it, with all the technical support system that they are able to see students, whether the students are online or the students are with them in the classroom. And this requires funding lah. So that's where allocating more funding for proctoring system, virtual classroom facility, and definitely teaching and learning training lah, because the training needs to be done more in order to equip our staff. Yeah. So what this project has done was to help for us to understand how the academic leaders face the decisions that they have to cope when the COVID-19 pandemic hit them, and how they thrive in their respective contexts. And we have found 12 dimensions, 12 components, and in our framework, and one that was emerging was the uncertainty. Ada soalan tentang facilities, not just about teaching and learning, but also in terms of kemudahan kediaman lah. Sebab pelajar-pelajar akan balik kan. So kemudahan kediaman ni macam mana? Apa yang sepatutnya kita sediakan? Ya. Tapi saya tak faham yang PKRC tu apa maksud dia? Sorry.
Which one, Prof?
This is a private.
I see. Okay, sebab tu saya tak dapat.
Yeah. So I need to know what is PKRC. Do you know what is PKRC?
PKRC.
I presume
No, I have no idea on that.
That's where certain inasis, certain college penginapan ni telah disediakan sebagai kuarantin ke? Is that it? Pusat kuarantin ke?
I have no idea on that. PKRC, right, Prof? PKRC. It is PKRC.
well, it says here, buka sebagai PKRC. So I assume PK tu
Pusat kuarantin lah kot.
kuarantin. Kan?
Pusat
Okay.
kuarantin residential college. It is?
Right.
I
Maybe,
think so.
maybe. Jom, kita sedang
Kita teka.
kita sedang teka-teka apakah
Pusat
akronimnya kan?
kuarantin dan rawatan
Um,
COVID maksudnya.
Pusat kuarantin dan
rawatan COVID.
COVID.
Alright. Okay. Sorry. Tak kena juga
Short
jawab
term.
dia. Okay. Well, in UUM, what we have for those coming back to the campus, kami ada college, kami panggil INASIS, Inapan Siswa dalam UUM-nya gate, and there's one kat Bukit Kaci which is outside of UUM. Outside of UUM tu taklah jauh, tapi kena naik bas lah juga. So when we have instances where our students had we had COVID cases among our students, these students were transferred to the Bukit Kaci lah, supaya dekat dalam ni kita make sure that dia tidak mengganggu, dia tidak menyebabkan orang lain pun terkena. Ini masa zaman Omicron ni tak ada. Bolehlah buat macam tu kan. Bila Omicron ada, that's where even the Menteri also says we're now no longer talking about post COVID ke apa. We're not talking about pandemic, but we're talking about endemic, where we live with the virus. Maksudnya at any point of time anyone can kena, and you just make sure that you have got your jab, because your jab will determine how serious and how not serious the cases will be. But in actual fact, to me, it's just asbab. At the end of the day, redha je lah, tapi kita kena pastikan kita berusaha untuk nak pastikan kita jaga kita punya SOP and all that kan. So, and berdoa supaya Allah jaga kita. So I think the nutshell of it is we do have initially, but to what extent that can actually be sustainable in the future, especially when students are coming back, more and more students are coming back, having to come back, how that can be feasible, that's a question. That's definitely a question that we have to consider. Okay. I hope that answers the question. Sebab kalau setakat community yang sedikit, yang kecil sahaja yang balik ke kampus, kita boleh kontrol lagi. Tapi kalau community tu semakin lama semakin ramai, maka susahlah untuk kita nak kontrol kan. So kita kena pastikanlah yang pelajar-pelajar sentiasa diberi peringatan. Jangan kata pelajar, kadang-kadang kita pun terlupa. Kita rasa rindu sangat nak bercakap dengan orang kan. Dah lah sekarang ni dah menjadi satu cara dah jumpa orang, dah tak payah nak salam-salam dah kan. So sometimes that kerinduan, and sometimes kita punya mode of thinking tu dah balik kepada dulu tu, kita terlupa. So pelajar kita dah lah, dia perindu kawan-kawan dia ni, dah lama tak jumpa. Ada setengah tu yang tak pernah jumpa pun, tengok nama je dekat dalam, daripada semester 1 sampailah ke semester 5 tak jumpa-jumpa lagi kawan dia. So bila dia balik jumpa kawan dia, oh you ni rupa macam ni, yang dalam gambar lain. In the real life lain. So so they might forget about the SOP and whatever, and that's where catastrophe will happen lah. So yeah. Okay.
So Prof want to continue with doing the reflective activities?
Yes, please.
Okay.
To do this, I need you to go to the there are 3 ways for you to enter this Mentimeter. Either you click on this, or you scan, or you just type www.menti.com and use this code 8423825. Yep. So basically ada banyak lah, and this perkataan tu dia tak sama dan semua orang. Everybody have their punya own ni kan, but whatever that is, the main challenges is actually the motivation and safety and time and commitment. You're right, because these are the main challenges that we face, especially as if you're talking about lecturer, if most of us are lecturer. That's exactly what we will face, because it's more tiring to teach online than in face-to-face. And I knew this when I started teaching via MOOC in 2018. Tu sebelum pandemic tu. The reason why I did that was I wanted to find out how does it feel, to get students who are not was not designed for online, but asking them to do it online via MOOC platform, and how do we as instructor deal with these people. Dia punya in a nutshell, kalau dalam kelas kita ada 36 orang, kalau kita tanya dekat pelajar-pelajar kita siapa yang ada soalan, selalunya 1, 2, 3 orang je yang akan tanya soalan, kan. So 3 orang je akan bertanya soalan dengan kita. Tapi bila kita bagi aktiviti dalam online, contoh soalan yang forum, dia kena jawab, dan forum itu dia mesti kena jawab. Maksudnya bila dia tak jawab dalam dia punya bar untuk dia punya progress bar tu tak banyak, kan. Jadi dia akan tahu dia terpaksa menjawab. Jadi at one point of time saya akan dapat 36 orang punya responses or feedback, and I have to respond to them because I had my own way of standard lah. I kata within 48 hours I have to make sure that I can respond to my students. So responding to my students can do it during the day, at 2 o'clock in the morning, at 4 o'clock in the morning. There was one time I was actually doing my proposal. I remember it was a TRGS proposal. So I was like writing my proposal at 4 o'clock in the morning, and suddenly dia keluar, dia kata macam somebody is actually sending a forum. So I was able to immediately reply, and that person actually say, "What are you doing up at 4 o'clock in the morning?" Because I thought I was the only one up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So what I'm trying to say here is the way when you respond to your students will differ, because your students will respond to you at different times too. Kalau kita face to face, students akan tanya dekat kita soalan dan kita akan respond kepada soalan pada pelajar kita pada waktu itu sahaja. Jaranglah berlaku selepas waktu tu, kecuali kalau memang betul lah kita tanya, kan. So that's why time and motivation and commitment is definitely crucial when we are talking about doing it via online, because the commitment to prepare our materials, the commitment to make sure that when we have 100 students in our classroom, how do we break them out in the breakout rooms to do the activities when we're doing synchronous activities? How do we manage the breakout rooms? How do we go into those breakout rooms? Penat tau nak pergi from one breakout room to another, to another, to another, to another. Compared to in a classroom, you can just sweep through and see siapa ada muka mereka yang berkerut tu, yang kat situ yang you akan pergi. Yang ini you nak kena make sure that you masuk dekat dalam tu, listen to them, what they're talking about, asking them 1 or 2 questions, coming out, go to another group, ask the same questions. So yeah, it takes time, it takes a different level of commitment, a different level of mindset, and that's how we have to move forward. That's how we have to make sure that the students are collaboratively learning, although they were learning in online. We have to do that because that's the way in which they can engage in learning, through their interaction, through solving the task that we have given them, even if it's done online. Yeah. And sebab tu kita tak boleh dah melihat kita punya cara mengajar tu sebagai according to the week. We have to do it in a modular base. Maksudnya berdasarkan kepada CLO. CLO yang pertama, topik apa yang kita akan bincangkan, figure it out to make one project or one task that they will do. Sebenarnya dia akan kill, dia sedang terpaksa meneliti semua topik-topik yang kecil-kecil tu before they continue lah with the next CLO. Okay. Actually, there's another question. I don't know whether you are able to see it, but I don't think time permits us. So I'm just going to skip this. And so in a nutshell, the core design is the curriculum. The world is already VUCA. We got to make sure that our curriculum now is ready for that. And how we approach teaching, there will be many jargons, hybrid lah, high flex lah, macam-macam. Doesn't matter lah apa jargon dia pun. The fundamental is to design the teaching strategies that will be appropriate and suitable for the context of your learners, the type of your learners, and the generation, in order for them to make sure that learning is on their part, not on ours. And while you're doing that, you have to remember that we are developing the human. We're not just focusing on the curriculum to make sure the curriculum is sticked, but we got also to make sure that the well-being and the human is actually developing well, and with a mindset of looking at the beginning with the end in mind. We need to know where we want to bring them, be ready for. And in terms of assessment, it's no longer about doing the assessment and ticking it off. Assessment now has got to go well with the analytics. That means the learning analytics. The more the technological people can help support the learning analytics, the better it helps the instructor to think or to do better at learning. So I'm going to stop at there because it's already 12:04. I'm going to allow you to ask questions if you're not tired.
Anyone from participant, if you have question, then you can unmute your microphone.
And I might have missed the chats while I was offline. So if there were any questions, you can let me know. But if not, please ask me any questions.
Dear participants, if you have any question, you can unmute your microphone, or you can write in the chat room. Anyone? So far in the chat room, there is no question, Prof. But I think you covered a lot, and then I think because you already answered a few questions during your session. So if not, I think it's already time's up, Prof. So I would like to wrap up the session for today. Thank you, Prof. Thank you very much, Prof, for your insightful and informative sharing. So from this sharing, I grabbed a few points from this sharing. So as an academician and administrator, I think we have to focus and giving focus on 12 components that's presented by Prof just now, such as curriculum, teaching practice, learning engagement, alternative assessment, internship and practicum, MQA and professional bodies, leadership, motivation, human resources, technology, infrastructure, and financial support, in order to ensure that education right now transform into current situation where it is pandemic COVID-19, post-pandemic COVID-19, and at the same time, we're able to work collaboratively within the current ecosystem. So I think this is very beneficial and full of content from Prof. So I feel so glad. And on behalf of CAM, I would like to thank Prof for all the informative information that you shared today with the participants. So insyaAllah ada masa kita berjumpa lagi, Prof. Masa akan datang mungkin kita akan jemput lagi untuk ada topik ke, Prof. Kalau Prof sudi, insyaAllah masa depan KAM dapat lagi lah menjemput Prof. Alright, so thank you very much, Prof. Thank you to all participants. Assalamualaikum, and take care, everyone.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you, Prof.
everybody.
Take care,
Stay
Prof.
safe.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.